John Pfeiffer is the first Deputy Commissioner for the Chicago Department of Family and Support, and Jim LoBianco is the Executive Director of Streetwise, an organization that works with homeless people in Chicago. So I'm going to start with you, John. So what will the city do with this information?
Well,
How will it help?
We collect this data every 2 years at the request of the federal government. It helps us to plan. The point-in-time count gives us much more detailed information about who is experiencing homelessness, what the issues that propelled them into the state of homelessness. So, for example, we know that only 14% of the people in our shelter system are currently employed. As part of our efforts to address homelessness, we have a new plan in the city of Chicago, Plan 2.0. One of its major priorities is addressing that high unemployment rate. So we are putting more investment in the area of employment services. Similarly, about 25% of the folks in the shelters are affected by domestic violence. So Mayor Marion is very concerned about this issue in particular, and we are going to make some additional investments in expanding shelter availability for families impacted by domestic violence.
And I know a lot of people may wonder why you do this in January. There's actually a reason behind it. What's the point of the coldest time?
The reason is that the shelters are fullest in the cold January weather, so we expect to reach as many people as possible on the night of the count in January.
It makes perfect sense when you think about it that way. So, Jim, are there enough services in the city? I know you guys are working really hard, but is it adequate? Are there enough services, even private services, to help the folks in the area that are homeless?
Chicago is very lucky to have a significant amount of social services across a range of needs, from adult homelessness to domestic violence, and especially Mayor Emanuel has really made an emphasis on youth homelessness. So there are a lot of services in Chicago. Shelter beds, there are enough shelter beds seemingly. I think the biggest problem is that somebody who may be experiencing homelessness on the north side, the shelters may not have beds available there. But across the city, traditionally there's always been open beds in the system. And for years, the city has run an emergency transportation system for the homeless. So to this day, the city of Chicago is able to get somebody who needs a bed to a bed wherever that may be. So there's no reason for anyone to have to sleep on the street.
Well, that's good to know, because you still see that happening, though, and you wonder why. Why does that still happen? Why is it when there are the shelters, are there still people sleeping out on the streets?
You know, lots of reasons. Some folks have had bad experiences in institutional care. Some people have mental health issues and are distrustful. Our job is to reach out to them and engage them. We build trust over time with our street outreach workers and bring them in. It's very, very cold out there these days, so I encourage any Chicagoan in the next few days, when temperatures are below freezing, to call 311 if they need to go to a warming center or a shelter.
And Jim, how vulnerable is this population, the homeless population?
Weather aside, sleeping on the street is one of the most dangerous things you can do. It is physically unsafe, but it also takes a huge toll on your health. This weather in particular is incredibly dangerous for people to be on the street. So even though there may be many reasons an individual may choose not to go in, or an individual may be suffering from an illness that prevents them from making a good decision, the reality is that the streets of Chicago are the most unsafe place to be if you're living day in and day out. So finding a service, Streetwise, for instance, functions as a warming shelter. We serve hot meals 5 days a week. You can come to us during the daytime, build a relationship. We'll try to place you in housing, supportive housing, transitional housing. But the most important thing is for men and women who are vulnerable on the streets of Chicago to take advantage of all the services that are available.
Okay, and you have mentioned, John, we have to run right now, but you mentioned there are about, at least during the last count, about 6,600 sheltered and unsheltered?
When we did this count 2 years ago, about 6,600 people. So we'll have the results of the count we just conducted in about 3 months.
Okay, well, thank you both so much for your hard work and for coming in to talk about it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.